right now, and it's in this book, and it's the first song, 1,000, number 1,000. Isn't that a great number? We're mixing things up a little so that we can have our choir sing before the children go downstairs, which means that all you teachers out there and youth can become singers. So be thinking of that when the choir sings it.
Please rise and body your spirit.
Isn't that a great, rousing beginning? My name is Jan Vanderhoof, and I'm president of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley. The board is integral in weaving the web of our community. All teams, committees connect through our board liaisons. We are the warp, and the rest of the community is weft. Now, just in case you don't know what that means, this is the weft going up and down. This is the warp going up and down. This is the weft coming across. And we need all of them to weave community. At our board meeting, we said we would therefore introduce the rest of our board. Again, my name is Jan Vanderhoof. Would the board members please rise in body? Our board has Ann Scarborough as vice president, waving up here. We have Cody Pace as treasurer, back there. I was thinking he'd say something about being warped. Ann Hess, there, helping with the streaming, is the secretary. And our other board members are Sandra Roach, Paul Carlson, and Lori Quigley as at-large members. Board, you may now be seated. Members at large. Members at large. Okay, I've got to change that. We are a covenantal rather than a creedal church. That means that from the pulpit, we want words spoken. Personally and sincerely, we have no required beliefs or creeds. Instead, using our 7 principles to guide us, members covenant with each other their mutual support. So in this same spirit, I give our traditional Sunday service greeting to all who enter here. This was written by Melanie Morell Enslinger. Come, come, whoever you are. You are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. You are welcome here. If you come here with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, then you are indeed welcome here. As we begin our service, please turn off electronic devices. I invite you to enjoy the chapel there in the back of the sanctuary and note joys and concerns in the book there. That chapel is that little outline with all the name tags on the outside, and you can see this getting out of the way so you can see the chapel. If you have little ones, we have a nursery downstairs, and after our service, I invite you all downstairs to enjoy hospitality and greet one another. I want you to know that is a very important part of this church in weaving the web of community. That's one of the reasons I introduced the whole board. I hope you all make a point of visiting at least one of them today. Yeah, Lord, we have a lot of people visiting. Finally, please note the announcements in your order of service with the many ways to be engaged in this vibrant community.
Good morning. I come with the great happiness of bright yellow and red leaves, with the hospitality of the forest, which is the home to a wide range of tiny insects, and all the way to that huge, elegant moose. This is one of the most beautiful autumns that I have experienced. I hope that all of us, amidst our cares and the news that seems almost always to bear something difficult, may we find time to walk around trees and smell the scent of fallen leaves. Mary Oliver wrote The Trees. Do you think of them as decoration? Think again. Here are maples flashing, and here are the oaks holding on all winter to their dry leaves, and here are the pines that will never fail until death, the instruction to be green. And here are the willows, the first to pronounce a new year. May I invite you to revise your thoughts about them. Oh Lord, how we are all for invention and advancement. But I think it would do us good if we would think about these brothers and sisters quietly and deeply. The trees, just holding on to the old holy ways. I invite you to hold those trees today as we do the work of peacemaking in this world. In that hope, the choir will come and sing the words of St. Francis, that man you probably know already, but I hope your understanding was deepened in our story last week with the wolf. The man who made peace with the wolf was also a lover of trees and all things alive, and he bid us to become instruments of peace. And I imagine, like an orchestra, all of us we would all kind of look different from one another. The choir is singing a little early, and it will take them a couple of minutes to come up here and sing. So I invite you to greet one another as they come up to get ready to sing.
Please rise in body or spirit for the lighting of our chalice. And I've invited Sierra Peters to help me light it. It's Ariel. I knew that. All right, please join us in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Thank you, thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, first thing I would like to do is to invite you to make a change in your order of service. If you have a pen handy where it says Lutrova, you can mark that out and replace it with T-I-N-G-E-Y. That's okay. Lutrova was the name that my wife wanted us to share when we got married. Unfortunately, it would have cost us another $300, with the court system to change her name to something different. So I adopted her last name as part of mine. She has yet to adopt mine as part of hers. So my name is Sophia Hastings, and I've been coming to South Valley for 7 years now. In that time, I served for a couple of years as the chair of the welcoming committee, and I have run for office 3 times. I've also served on numerous boards and councils from the national level to the local level. To be honest, these are things I would have never imagined myself doing. In 2008, while I was exploring my need to transition, I decided I would explore the feminine aspect of the divine, and I was completely blown away in my experience. Having grown up Baptist and having also tried Pentecostalism as a more spiritual path, I suddenly realized that there was a different spiritual journey for me. I had already had dreams where I felt like I was being told by the divine that the path to spirituality was by way of fellowship and community. So when I shared my experiences with a coworker, she suggested that I look into Unitarian Universalism. I'd never heard of this thing before. So I went immediately to the source, Google. So there I found the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. And as I read over each one of those principles, it's like, these are things that I know in my heart, I believe. These are things I identify with. And because they resonated with my own core beliefs, I decided to bolster up a little courage and visit Westside Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Worth. I didn't go to Sophia the first time. And it was a little nervous because I was asking people how they accepted transgender people there. They explained that yes, we did have a welcoming place for transgender people. So I said, okay, we'll test this. The following week I came as Sophia. I was actually more welcome when I came as myself. In fact, the following month, they asked me to actually get up in front of the congregation and read the chalice Latin words that they had prepared. And, soon after that, I participated in a radical hospitality workshop that they held at 9:30 in the morning. And when I saw that they were having auditions for a particular set of monologues, and it was for a trend that highlighted the lives of transgender experience, I read the monologue that they had, and that also resonated with me. So I thought to myself, this is a sign I have to be in this. I just barely started attending this church, now they're having these monologues here, and now this is a piece that I know resonates deeply with me. So I was cast for the first time professionally in my life, and I started feeling as if my life genuinely had purpose. For me, not only has why I'm here been a deep existential quest, so as who am I? Little did I know that these would actually become interwoven. When I lost my job in 2009, I took a job in Louisville, Kentucky, where I started attending First Unitarian Church there. I was soon asked to be the greeting coordinator for the church, which, to be honest, was a huge step outside my comfort zone, as, I'm not the best at remembering people's names, and I figured that was a requirement of the job. But I faithfully organized the coffee and greeting schedule and had many conversations at the door. It's where I learned that conversations change you. Every person you talk to, every bond that you form. I learned that my spiritual path was actually making connections. I was also appointed to the membership board at that time, and on Easter Sunday in 2010, while playing the part of the Velveteen Rabbit, I asked for the blessing of the church while I transitioned. In September of that year, I was offered a job at Overstock in Cottonwood Heights, this area. When I told my friends that I was moving to the Salt Lake area, they were excited. They told me that it was awesome because one of the ministers was the first transgender minister ever. It's like, I'm just getting really excited about this. I have to meet this person. So when I arrived and moved to West Jordan, I went straight to First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City. Besides not having the first transgender minister there, I had gotten used to the lay-led feel that made me feel at home and welcome. The pews made me feel a little bit nervous and drew me back to those old days of not being accepted for who I was. So the following week, when I found out, no, that the minister's not here, they're at South Valley, I came down to South Valley. But of course, he wasn't here anymore. But, however, I was immediately welcomed and introduced to the LGBT group Interweave. Interweave was a group I had been invited to be a part of while I was in Louisville, so I knew exactly what the group was about. That evening, I had also heard that there was a protest in downtown Salt Lake City to which I was invited, in which we had a lion around the temple. That was my first protest of what was soon to become many. It wasn't long before I was asked to be the welcoming chair here, and I took that role for a couple of years. My activism led me into politics. I fought unfair insurance policy with help from people here. I petitioned an attorney general, and I sought to sway legislators. I knew that the trans community needed a voice, and if no one else would stand up, I would. Being a voice can be hard, but it gives you a sense of purpose. There are some days when you feel like you're just one in the chorus, and others when it seems like you are a lone voice, crying in the wilderness. But no matter my battles, I have always been able to come home to South Valley, where I find the support here.
We are blessed to have you with us, Sophie. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so before we start getting ready for our story, I have a quick announcement. If you have heard us talk about the OWL program here at church, the Our Whole Lives Comprehensive Sexuality Education, and it sparked your interest in any way, we are going to be hosting locally a training for all of the levels of teaching OWL. So if it is something that you have been interested in facilitating, this is the first time in over a decade that you wouldn't have to travel away from Utah to be trained. So if that's something that interests you, I'll be down in the social hall after services. Come talk to me. It's coming up the weekend before Thanksgiving. And now we'll get ready for our story time. I'd like to invite all of the young and young at heart to come forward. Okay, now normally we talk about how we are all on the same team, right? As UUs, we are all on the same team. But today's story requires us to be on two different teams. We need to be on either Team Wind or Team Sun. Will the wind and the sun join us? right in half, okay? So you guys scooch this way just a little bit. You are Team Sun. Will you pass these around to your side, Maki? On Team Sun, you get to help Hey guys. Okay, hold your thoughts. If you're on Team Sun, you're going to help reflect the sun's rays with these ancient discs. So this team, and you can pass them around to the adults back on this side if you like. And then if you are on Team Wind, you are going to use your mouth by blowing as hard as you can and waving a ribbon to show how hard you're blowing. I'll pass those out a little bit, spread them around, share them. Okay. All right, I think we're ready. Are you ready, Team Wind? Are you ready? Yeah. How about everybody blow? Go. All of you, come on. All of you, there we go. Team Wind, okay. Team Sun, if you don't have one of these ancient discs to flash, you get to give us jazz hands. Okay, ready? Yeah, that's the sun. Okay, you're sending sun energy. All right, we are now ready.
So once upon a time, very, very long ago, up in the sky, so high where we cannot see, the sun had a conversation with the wind. And the wind said, "I am stronger than you are." And the sun said, "I don't think so." So they decided to have a competition. And they saw down, way down on earth, a woman walking in a sweater. And the wind said, "I am stronger than you are, and I will show you. We're going to have a contest about who can make that human down there take off her sweater." And so the wind did what the wind does. The wind blew and blew and blew and blew. She almost lost track of her sweater, but in the end, she held it close to her. And then the sun said, "Let me try." And so the sun came out and cast his warm energy, gentle at first, getting warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. And the human down there was sweating, so it had to get even warmer and warmer. But she kept her sweater on. Why? We don't know. Warmer and warmer. And then all of a sudden, she got the idea, maybe if I take my sweater off, I'll get cooler. Oh, so suddenly, she took her sweater off. Guess who won? The sun. So Nelson Mandela loved this story, and he said to people who wanted to blow and make lots of change by blowing, he told this story and said, you can make more change by being the sun. What?
Yep, there's
Extra suns. So the sun won. The warmth was able to win the prize. So thank you all for coming down for this story. Thank you for being the sun and the wind. Let us breathe together and imagine the earth under our feet and farther down. We see what geologists can imagine so clearly, all those layers down to the fiery core. And then if we extend ourselves upward, we go up through these clouds, up to where the sun lives. The wind, up to that place where all the stars are twinkling. And as we look from that perspective, we look at this earth, this beautiful earth that is turning towards autumn, this glorious earth that blesses us. And in this glorious earth, we have humans, all of us, and extending out farther and farther, who are experiencing all of those parts of life, who are rejoicing at the birth of children, who are mourning at loss. And today we gather with the people connected, for we are all connected. We gather with the people connected with those who died in Las Vegas last week in a mass shooting. 58 people, their families and friends stretching out farther and farther, and 489 more who were injured. We also stand with the people of Puerto Rico and Texas, and the people of Louisiana, who are feeling the effects of Hurricane Nate as we worship here. Many are most certainly experiencing PTSD from Katrina, wondering how this will all play out. And in our own community, we lift up the families. We have a family whose father has suffered a fall and is now hospitalized. And Christine Hero's husband, John, who is struggling with cancer. We also hold Ted Gurney, who is undergoing cancer therapy. We also have joy and healing and love and the trees that are putting on such a beautiful show this year. The best show I have seen in Utah so far. I will ring the bell, and I invite you to say the names of any who are on your heart, who are in trouble or who are rejoicing at this time, I invite you also to consider the peace of this world. David Willis. Rebecca Willis. Together we hold all those names, spoken and unspoken, in the arms of this community. And together, let us take a moment and imagine a peaceful world. Or if that is too far away, a peaceful family. Amen, and may it be so. Thank you, David. And I also want to give you special thanks as you have held me during this time. And I have put in the, through the listserv, that my diagnosis is getting better all the time. And I will begin radiation on Thursday. And I want to express my wholehearted gratitude for the way you have held me during this time. Amen. And thanks to all of you.
In the spirit of serving our wider community, we share our Sunday morning worship service offering with a charitable organization whose works align with our values and principles. We are currently donating half of our offerings to the Volunteers of America Adult Detoxification Program. Detoxification is the first step on the path to sobriety, but is often inaccessible to the homeless or those without health care coverage. The VOA offers a solution that makes this first step possible for members of this population who battle the chronic disease addiction. Will you join me now in saying the words printed in the order of service for the collection of our offering? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. The VOA and South Valley thanks you for your gifts.
Our reading today is a story some of you may be familiar with. In an interview with Richard Stingo, Nelson Mandela told this fable that he had been using with his followers. I told the incidents of an argument between the sun and the wind. That the sun said, "I'm stronger than you are," and the wind said, "No, I'm stronger than you are." And they decided, therefore, to test their strength with a traveler who was wearing a blanket. And they agreed that the one who would succeed in getting the traveler to get rid of his blanket would be the stronger. So the wind started. It started blowing, and the harder it blew, the tighter the visitor tried to hold the blanket around his body. And the wind eventually gave up. The sun started its rays very mild, and they increased in strength. And as they increased, the traveler felt that the blanket was unnecessary because the blanket is for warmth. And so he decided to relax it, to loosen it. But the rays of the sun became stronger and stronger, and eventually he threw it away. So by a gentle method, it was possible to get the traveler to discard his blanket. And this is the parable that through peace, you will be able to convert, you see, the most determined people. And that is the method we should follow.
On the 16th of June, 1976, with the Soweto uprising, mass protests of Black South Africans erupted over the white government's policy to enforce education in the language of Afrikaans rather than the native languages. The image of this uprising that spread through the world was of a youth carrying the body of his younger brother. The number of dead estimated were from 176 to 700. Have you ever been really angry? I want you to really think about this question. Have you ever been really angry? All the saints, raise your hands. I'm not going to ask you to say out loud who you were angry with, but I'm asking you to just, for a moment, remember that feeling. It isn't a good feeling, but it's a feeling that we share as humans. I want you to have some connection with the people Nelson Mandela was talking to when he said, 20 years, or almost 20 years after the Soweto massacre, he said, "Through peace, you will be able to convert." You see, the most determined people, you will be able to convert them. And that is the method we should follow. Peace. Yesterday, I thought of the bamboo forests around our home in Japan when we took a drive on the Alpine Loop. And we saw the afternoon light slanting through the aspens. We lived on a cliff in the countryside of Japan for 14 years, 10 years in a city. And that farmhouse was a place where we felt a strong sense of home and place. The house to our left, up the steep, narrow road that ran along the edge of the cliff, was owned by the Nakayama family. The house on the other side was owned by the Sakano family, who had moved to the city, and they left it vacant. Not long after we had put a huge amount of money into retiling this massive farmhouse roof and reconstructing the foundation, Mr. Nakayama decided to construct a chicken coop in the Sakano house below us and move his large and beautiful Chinese roosters and their hens to that place. The coop was about 20 feet from the uninsulated wall next to where we slept. The rooster began crowing not at dawn, at about 3 a.m. And he had what Lou would say, a sore throat. It was not a beautiful sound. And very, very loud. This went on for a few weeks before we told Mr. Nakayama about it. And he said, we couldn't put them by our house because they make noise. His wife came over and said, ha ha ha, I hear you don't like the chickens. We were heartbroken. We had just put all of our money into that house, and who would ever buy it from us now? Our paradise had been invaded by noisemakers, and we became angrier and angrier when they woke us up at 3 a.m. and then kept crowing until 7 or so. Earplugs did not work, if that's what you're thinking we should have done. We wanted to kill the roosters. We had just spent a huge amount of money replacing a massive tile roof and the foundation of the house, that when you would jump, it would bounce with you. Finally, the house was solid, and then came the roosters. We were stuck. Those roosters robbed us of our peace and sense of home. When we would drive home, we would be thinking about the roosters. I imagine that most of you, in one way or another, have faced such a situation that was out of your control. Perhaps a new coworker who made you miserable, or a boss who was horrible. There are any number of things that make us feel terrible. We tried kindness, you can only imagine. We brought them presents, big bottles of sake and boxes full of sweets, and kindly asked them to move their roosters. And our feelings of anger and grief were awful. Those raging stress hormones. Going to bed at night and lying there knowing that sleep would be cut short by the roosters was horrible. The model of forgiveness I had been brought up with did not work at all. When I was taught that in order to be forgiven when I did something wrong, I had to admit it, feel truly remorseful, and then never do it again. The first parts I could do, but I tended to do the same things over and over again. So when I would ask forgiveness from God or my parents or teachers over and over again, the part of admitting and feeling remorseful began to feel like a huge burden. I felt sheepish and false, kneeling in prayer and saying, I've done it again, God, and I am sorry. I feel terrible, and I bet you don't believe me when I promise I won't do it again, which I knew I had to do at the end of every prayer. I really envied the Catholics who had that priest who could say, you are forgiven. And you could even go to a different church, a different Catholic church, and get a different priest who hadn't heard it. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely to live in Italy? You could just go from church. So I just imagined God was up there looking at me with a really big frown and saying, I've heard this before. Even for me, learning that Jesus died for all of my sins made it worse. The atonement, the teaching of the atonement, added to my burden in a strange way. I didn't like the idea that I had contributed to his suffering. And then there was forgiving others for what they did, the other side of this. Then I became a little like that God who was hard on me. Even when my belief changed, I kept that teaching that if people did something bad to me, that they needed to feel bad about it and tell me and do some groveling. The groveling was really important to me. But the problem with this side of forgiveness was that people rarely knew that they had done anything wrong. And then it was 1983. I was 5 years old. No, I'm just kidding. In 1983, I left my husband, who I was married to for a very short time, and my birth religion, and Lou and I came out. This was so many years ago, and we were kind of like pioneers, although we didn't feel it at the time. And I remember meeting someone who was a church leader who had been a friend. We were in a bank parking lot. My Volkswagen was over there, he was here, and I was crying. And I said, I feel like I'm in a bad dream. And he said, you are in a bad dream, and you will never wake up. Ooh, kindness. I probably heard those words in my head over and over again. It facilitated me leaving the church he was a part of, and it became another kind of burden. When I wanted to forgive, I was faced with the problem. When I finally wanted to forgive him, I was faced with that problem that he didn't think he'd done anything wrong. And in the model I had bought about forgiveness, he was supposed to at least admit he was wrong in order for me to let it go. That was how I thought forgiveness would be, because that's how I had to do it. And I thought that some groveling would be really good, and an acknowledgement of how much pain he'd caused me. So guess what? I didn't let it go. And living in this city has given me the chance of running into him twice. That model of forgiveness did not fit me. And it did not fit the kind of revolutionary change needed in Mandela's South Africa, in Gandhi's India, and Martin Luther King's America. The people who were enacting the injustice did not see what they were doing as injustice or even wrong. These three men, like us, had to find a way to transform their anger at the injustices that piled in their hearts so much bigger than mine. They had to find a way of transforming their anger in order to become leaders who could bend that arc of justice. And they did. I encourage you to read their autobiographies. They are Bibles to me. In his autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela describes how he became the leader. He is the one who told that story that we enacted with the children. And also, it's from Aesop, but he retold that story. When he was a leader and the young people felt such anger, he talked about becoming a warm sun to the white and black people of South Africa. During the 27 years he spent on Robben Island, a tiny island that was a prison, now it is a museum, off the coast of Cape Town. In those 27 years, so if you're not there yet, you've got a long time. But in those 27 years, he transformed his anger by meditating. Meditating to deeply understand white South Africans. He learned Afrikaans, the language of white South Africa, the language that caused those Soweto riots, the language that was forced upon his people. He learned it so that he could speak with people in their language. For Nelson Mandela, all three of these men became saints in their own time. Very human saints. Very human saints. And I believe that what they did was not magical. At heart, they knew that this was the only way that they could lead. And it was the only way that the futures that all three of them could imagine could be realized. They were highly practical saints. Nelson Mandela led his people with something different from the forgiveness that would have required the impossible. He could not ask for the groveling of the white South Africans. And in the book that I read, that I highly recommend, this is terrible. No, it's not. It's by, I read the entire thing, underlined lots of things, by a philosopher named Nussbaum on anger and forgiveness. And she lifts up all of these examples. But in this book, she talks about how these three leaders did it. They could have thought that being a strong wind could have made change, like so many leaders do. But Nelson Mandela knew that the strong wind would have kept people with their coats on. Instead, he met them with generosity of heart. Instead of scolding and showing the face of an angry God who demanded repentance, on his inauguration day, he went up to an officer in the white security forces that had done countless degrading things to black South Africans in the past. He went up to one individual and he said, "You have become our peace. You are our peace." And that soldier, that man, he had expected something so different, he began to cry. He wept. The men struggling to hold on to their coats could take them off because they were affirmed that this new leadership would have the warmth of the sun. I believe that the work of Nelson Mandela, is as true for Utah as it is for South Africa. My recent experiences with hospitals, where I have been able to have Lou with me for appointments, not because she is my friend, she is my legal wife. And I do not want to forget how monumental it is for her to have the legal right to be there. She could be there legally when I woke up from surgery. We have made great changes in this very state already, in this country. And there is so much more to do within us. and without us. And keep remembering it took Nelson Mandela 27 years to become the man who could go to that soldier. Gandhi, in his incredible work, repeatedly insisted that the soul of a person who has not undertaken an inner transformation is not free. I invite all of you, let us be free. Let us go on that journey to freedom. Here in Utah, we need to work at transforming our anger. This is what I find deeply disappointing about the demonstrations I have participated in here, and I will continue to participate in them anyway. But the rhetoric of change that I hear in those demonstrations often spits in the eyes of those people whose help we need in order to make change. When I was at Standing Rock last year, I experienced that incredible generosity that invited change, that invited those veterans to come and to apologize to the leaders there for the history with Native Americans on this land. I was able to witness that transformation to generosity, and it was very healing to the heart. It is a kind of healing that we all need, that this world needs. Just as Mandela, each of us in the worlds that surround us need to work on transforming our anger to generosity. We need to turn our personal swords into plowshares. No one is good at that at first. But as Martha Nussbaum points out, just because we're not good at it is not a good enough reason not to try. If you're not good at playing the piano right away, you don't just say, that's just how I am, I'm just not good at it. Each of us needs to find our own Robin Island, our own way to transform. And I want you to be warned, this is hard work. There are no real shortcuts, and the work is rewarding. The first time I ran into that man in Salt Lake City, I had the strangest experience. I got back into my car after seeing him, and I lost my way home. I finally went off. Salt Lake City's difficult to do that. I mean, it's kind of on a grid, and I was downtown. I wasn't winding in Sandy somewhere. I was downtown, and I saw him the night before, and I went to an African dance class. And as I was driving home, I realized I didn't know where I was, and I had to pull over and stop. And I called Lou and talked her through it. And then I saw him again, and I could feel a little bit of opening. A little bit of opening. And I didn't feel so disoriented after I saw him that time, because he brought me right back to 1983. And a time when I had left my entire community and my family, and he had said those horrible words. So this takes time, and each of our journeys is different. If we together can look to the future, I don't believe that we will ever transform Utah into Vermont. And we probably wouldn't want to. We like Utah. And we can be a state with justice for all, just like South Africa. And I wonder, can we trade in that retributive idea for forgiveness, for a new idea, generosity of heart. That is how Nelson Mandela did it, and Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. I am walking beside you in this work, not in front of you. The leaders of my former church, I know they're not going to get down on their knees and apologize. And I keep running into this man. I wonder if I will run into him again and then be able to drive home fine. I hope so. I have begun to feel from the beginning, actually, of living here, that it was a great chance for me to return to Salt Lake City, which was such a place of pain for me. If I can drop this idea of needing an apology, if I can drop this for simply expanding my heart, then I'm ready to do the work of right now. I'm not stuck in the past, carrying around those huge bags of resentment. Those of you who are new to this, please know this. New to us, new to this community, know this. We are not perfect. I am not perfect. You can ask Lou. She'll tell you. I often see people coming to us and thinking that we as a community will be everything the other place wasn't. But I hope that instead of giving up on us the first time you see imperfection, consider that this place might be your Robin Island, a place to transform your anger into a way of being that contributes to the future we imagine of respect and inclusion for all. One morning, many, many years ago, I suppressed my anger, and I walked next door in our farming village in Japan, and I talked with that pesky neighbor. I said, "Mr. Nakayama-san, do itashimashou?" "What shall we do?" I asked him in very polite Japanese. "What can we do to get you to remove those roosters?" He thought about it for a long time. And then he said, "Well, if I had one of those little construction huts right over there, I'd take them over there." Guess what? Lou and I found him one of those little construction huts, which is a long and hilarious story. But once they brought one on a crane and let it down on that land that we found out later was not his land, it was somebody else's. So this all continued. Lots of anger towards us we had to resolve. He moved his roosters. Heaven came back. We lived there another 10 years. I believe just as that village was for us, and Salt Lake City continues to be for us, that these places, these churches we attend, even when they are liberal churches, can be testing grounds, can be places to grow. And we need these testing grounds in order to transform ourselves. I invite you to put up photographs, late photographs of Gandhi and Mandela and King, someplace where you can see them, where you can see how they transformed. Because Because if all of us can do that work together, then we can have hope that this state and this world might possibly transform. May it be so. Amen. I now invite you to stand in body or spirit and let us sing together in your gray hymnals, number 299, Channels for the Streams of Love. May we see the ways that are already in our lives that can be vehicles for us to expand our hearts, to be big and generous like Nelson Mandela's, Martin Luther King, and Mahatma Gandhi. May we also grow our imaginations to see as he did how great and fair our country can become, our state can become. Amen, and may it be so. apologize because I think I was a little ambiguous. I have an excellent prognosis. Excellent. They think that they they're very happy. My surgeon said we were able to get it all out, and I think I became a little ambiguous because there are other people in this community who are struggling with things that are more difficult than that. So I didn't want to be it's sort of impossible to not be the center of attention, which is also difficult for me right now. So I just wanted to let you know that my surgeon is very, very happy. She even thought that I needed her to say, "You have an A." She probably saw my inner student in me. To Lou and saying, "Lou, she sounded a little funny about that." Anyway, so please be assured that I think we're over this. I still have to have radiation. I don't have to have chemotherapy. So it's really an excellent thing. They found it so quickly. So I want to also let you know that when we were in Norway June, I couldn't go to sleep at night, and I'd wake up and I'd have all these thoughts, and I kept going, stop thinking, sleep. And then I woke up and I thought, maybe you should listen. Because usually at night you get all this like blah, 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 blah. I do, anyway. So I had this message, I should listen. And the message was, you need to go to your doctor. And that is how, for me, they were able to catch this at such an early stage. So I also just tell you that story to invite you to listen. And it was hard for me to listen because I had a mother who listened too closely. And she was always going to the doctor and saying, I have a feeling I have this. But I bear witness to listening. It's better to go too often. So, I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't want you to go to Lou and go, tell me there's something wrong. So everything is going very well. So this is the time in our service. Thank you. This is our time in our service before we extinguish our chalice, when I invite any Jan, our board president, will do that. As we extinguish the chalice, I invite you to keep that light in your hearts and to take it out in the world. And I also realized I forgot to tell you that we are having photographs taken for our directory. And please sign up, because I'd like to see your photo in there. Where do we? At the visitor table, just in the foyer. Okay. Thank you, and go in peace.
Patty.